Nowadays, people get in trouble for telling the truth. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Former Vikings legendary wide receiver, Hall of Famer, and the greatest wide receiver of all time, Randy Moss, was just the latest guy to get in trouble for that. So he was on Terrell Owens' podcast, Get Your Popcorn, and the topic was ranking of the greatest wide receivers of all time. And, it came up. And Moss rightfully said this, quote, "I'll put myself first. I'll put T.O. second. I'll put Jerry Rice probably third or fourth. I'm talking about dominating the game and changing the game of football. I don't live on statistics because if you live on statistics and live on championships, that's all political. You've seen guys released or cut from a team just by a couple of words in the media. You've seen guys given contracts, or you've seen guys not given contracts just because of the color of their skin. You got to throw politics out of the game of football and look at the impact of each individual was able to make in the game of football," end quote. And then T.O. chimed in about Jerry, quote, "When you think about Jerry and the quarterbacks he played with, he never had a drop-off in quarterback. He went from one Hall of Fame quarterback to another," end quote. Now, does Randy Moss have a point about him being number one? Yes, absolutely, because the operative phrase was changing the game. Randy Moss changes how defenses covered, especially the deep ball, as well as how teams drafted. Like Jerry Rice, respect, but he was a cog. He was a system wide receiver. I mean, another great West Coast wide receiver from the Bill Walsh system. Almost like John Taylor, almost like Dwight Clark, yada, 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 yada. Randy Moss was the greatest pass threat of the last century of football. Like maybe Don Hudson, back in the day. But Randy Moss is clearly number one. And I get Terrell Owens at two. Now, that may be a little bit shocking. That might be the most controversial part of this entire segment. But yes, Randy could be pandering to his host. Sure, I mean, it's T.O. show after all. But also, Terrell Owens was legit. He had 15,934 yards. And the only thing that kept him from being number one on the Hall of Fame ballot was because writers didn't like his attitude in the media when he was playing. So that's whatever. But Jerry Rice, yes, he is Hall of Fame worthy. Yes, he is one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. But also, let's not ignore that he was quite possibly the most pampered and privileged wide receiver in NFL history, both from a coaching and quarterback standpoint. And yeah, looking at the all-time receiving list, Jerry leads Fitz by almost 6,000 yards. 6,000. 22,895 is probably never going to be broken. Randy checking in at 4 with 15,292. After Randy Moss said his piece, Jerry decided to clap back. He couldn't be the bigger man. He had to be kind of petty. So he put on Instagram in a post that's been deleted comparing stats and Super Bowl wins. But also, if you extrapolate Randy Moss's 14 years of production over the 21 that Jerry played, you have more yards, you have more touchdowns by far, as well as, I didn't know that Super Bowls are suddenly an individual stat. I didn't know that Jerry Rice single-handedly won those 3 Super Bowls and then also lost in 2002 against the Bucs. I didn't know that Randy Moss was in coverage when David Tyree made the helmet catch in 2007. I didn't know that Randy Moss's defense allowed Joe Flacco to go buck wild in the Super Bowl. Also, I did not know that Randy Moss was the one who cut the power at the Superdome that killed the Niners' momentum and let the Ravens just back in the game. Crazy, right? Plus, coaches, like we mentioned, Jerry Rice went from Bill Walsh, the greatest offensive mind in NFL history, to Mike Holmgren, who won a Super Bowl, to Mike Shanahan, who won 2 Super Bowls, to Steve Mariucci, who's legit, to John Gruden, who won a Super Bowl. Randy Moss's coaches, besides a short time entering the league under Denny Green, my guy, respect. Bill Belichick, yes. But also, Mike Tice. Randy Ratio, the great football genius that is Mike Tice. Also, his head coach, his first year in Oakland, was Norvell, really. Also, looking at the quarterbacks, I mean, this is where it just completely separates. So Jerry Rice enters the league. Joe Montana was at the height of his powers, already the greatest quarterback of all time, already won 2 Super Bowls. So he walks into that situation with Joe Montana. And then Steve Young, Hall of Famer. Jeff Garcia, 4-time Pro Bowler. Then he goes to Oakland. Rich Gannon, who was the 2002 NFL MVP. MBN. Must be nice. Randy Moss's quarterback, so this is famous, entered the league 98, Brad Johnson, Randall Cunningham, who had been selling granite, and then Jeff George, Dante Culpepper, Todd Bauman, Gus Farad, Jay Fiedler, Spurgeon Wynn. Then he went to Oakland, and Kerry Collins, and Andrew Walter, and Aaron Brooks, and Marquez Tuiasosopo, the pride of Washington. Then finally, 07, Tom Brady, Matt Castle, Brian Hoyer, the corpse of Brett Favre in 2010. And then he went to the Niners, Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick, and then Vince Young and Rusty Smith to finish out the string. Yeah, you forgot he was with the Titans. Awesome. And yeah, Jerry Rice is a Hall of Famer. Yes, he is one of the greatest of all time. But are you telling me that if you take Jerry Rice's coaching and his quarterbacks and you put Randy Moss in there for 21 seasons, that he wouldn't have the same stats and rings or more? It's far-fetched, man. Or what about Fitz? Yeah, speaking of a guy who never had a good quarterback except for Kurt Warner for a hot second. Yeah, what about Fitz? What about him? Huh? Or what about Chris Carter? Or what about T.O.? Or what about Isaac Bruce? Yeah, I think that a big part of it is quarterbacking and scheme and coaching. And Moss is 100% right. He absolutely is. And Jerry looked petty AF with that little clapback. Two things can be true at once. Like, Jerry can be one of the greatest wide receivers of all times, and also he was the most pampered and privileged wide receiver of all time as well. Both are true. Both are. Moss, 100% right on this one. But your thoughts. Randy Moss's thoughts on Jerry Rice. Let us know in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support that work? Post on the Venmo. But until next time, Skol, production value.